Hello, and welcome to Cindy's Corner. Today, boys and girls, I love Curious George. I hope you do too. And if you have the book, Curious George Visits the Library, go get it so that you can follow along. And while they're getting their book, my friends out there, go ahead and hit that thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. My AR testers, this is a level 2-9. And here's our title page. Curious George Visits the Library. The author is Margret and H.A. Rays. The illustrator is H.A. Ray by Martha Weston. This is George. He is a good little monkey and always very curious. Today, George and his friend, the man in the yellow hat, were at the library. And here they have story hour today at 11 o'clock. So he's going to story time, kind of like you do with me. George had never been to the library before. He had never seen so many books before either. Everywhere he looked, people were reading. Some people read quietly to themselves. Here's the children's room. But in the children's room, the librarian was reading out loud. It was story hour. George loves stories. He sat down with a group of children to listen. The librarian was reading a book about a bunny. George liked bunnies. Behind the librarian was a book about a dinosaur. George liked dinosaurs even more. He hoped she would read it next. But next, the librarian read a book about a train. George tried to sit quietly and wait for the dinosaur book to be read. Here he is. He's getting antsy, isn't he? But sometimes it's hard for a little monkey to be patient. It's kind of how you are sometimes, isn't it? Yeah. Can't sit still very long. I have to practice that. When the librarian started a story about jungle animals, George could not wait any longer. He had to see the dinosaur book. He tiptoed closer. Look, a monkey, shouted a girl. The librarian put her finger to her lips. We must be quiet so everyone can hear, she said nicely. But there's a monkey, said a boy. The librarian nodded and smiled. She agreed. When she finished reading the jungle story, the librarian reached for the dinosaur book. Where did it go? And where was George? He got the dinosaur book, and away he goes. George was all ready to take the dinosaur book home and read it with his friend when another book caught his eye. This book was about trucks. George wanted to take it home too. And here was a book about elephants. George loved elephants. He added it to his pile. He's getting several to take home, isn't he? George found so many good books. He soon had more books than he could carry. He leaned against the shelf to rest. Squeak went the shelf. Shh, said the man. Squeak went the shelf again, and it moved. Why, it wasn't really a shelf after all. George had found a special cart for carrying books. There's the cart. Does your librarian have a cart? What luck. Now George could carry all the books he wanted. He rode the cart between the shelves and stacked up books about boats and kites and baking cakes. He climbed higher to reach books about cranes and planes. There's this airplane book. At last, George had all the books he could handle. He couldn't wait to head home and start reading. And right in front of him was a ramp leading to the door. George was curious. Could he row the cart all the way home? Uh-oh, what's going to happen? Look at his cart. Down the ramp George went. The cart rode faster and faster. Stop! A library volunteer shouted. Come back here with my cart. But George was too excited to listen. The cart was picking up speed, and George was having fun. He's riding on the cart, isn't he, down the slope? Uh-oh, what's going to happen? Until, crash, George and the cart ran smack into a shelf of encyclopedias. Books flew up in the air, and so did George. He landed in a big pile right between O and P. Because the encyclopedias are in order. And it was the O and P. Look at him. He's scared, isn't he? See that face? Oh, no, moaned the volunteer when he saw the mess George made. How am I going to put away all these books? I'd like to borrow this one, said a boy from Story Hour. I'll take this one, said a girl. Now they're picking out the books, aren't they? With help from George and the children, the books were sorted in no time. Soon there was just a small pile of George's favorites left. Would you like to take those books home with you? The volunteer asked George. Then he took George to a special desk and helped him get his very own library card. George was holding his brand new library card with his friend when his friend arrived with a stack of books of his own. There you are, George, he said. I see you are all ready to check out. George and his friend gave their books to the librarian. She smiled when she saw George's pile. I was wondering where this dinosaur book went, she said. It's one of my favorites, too. The librarian stamped the books and handed them back to George. With his books under one arm, George waved goodbye to the volunteer, the librarian, and the children from the story hour. Come see us again, George, the librarian said, waving back. Enjoy your books. He's waving. And he did. The end. Have you ever been to a library? Maybe you have a school library. Maybe you have a county library. I have Van Buren County Library in Clinton, Arkansas. And I go for story time there and share with them sometimes. And I have a library card so I can check out books and bring them and read or whatever, and then take them back. You usually have a couple, 2 to 3 weeks to read them and bring them back, so you can get several at one time here. Sometimes they only give you 2 weeks. So if you have a library card or you have a library that you visited, tell me about a time that you visited and what goes on there. What do they do at the library? And do you have a library card? Do you have to have a card? Sometimes we have a number and we just give them that number. And that's the same as a library card. Just not the physical card. You just have the number memorized. Tell me about the time that you've gone to the library. And what do you do there? I'm anxious to hear. I hope you enjoyed story time with George in the library. And go ahead and give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share us with your friends. And don't forget, give somebody a hug and tell them you love them.